Welcome to Epic Geek Out, the only show on the internet that decides to spend their holidays with Darth Vader himself. I'm your host, Rob.
And I'm your host, Chad, and today we're talking about a new film that's come out called Killing Them Softly.
And on Thursday, we're going to be giving our review of Hitman Absolution?
That's correct.
I think it's them.
That is correct.
It's a very mobster-ish themed killing week here at Epic Geek Out.
So, as always, you can check us out over at Twitter at Epic Geek Out. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Epic Geek Out. Also, check out the website, www.epicgeekout.com. But let's get into our review of Killing Them Softly. So, Killing Them Softly was directed by Andrew Dominik, and stars Brad Pitt, who have teamed up in the past for the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Also stars Ray Liotta, Richard Jenkins, and James Gandolfini, and is the story of. It's a story of this one hitman who is played by Brad Pitt, who is hired to kill these two guys who hold up a poker game. And there's not much plot besides that, really, in this movie. No. It's kind of as realistic as I think kind of this genre I've seen before in the past of it. Just trying to really, kind of a character study of a movie, I would say, of these people who are in this world and kind of the business side of how these, things work. So, I heard some people relating it to Goodfellas. I didn't see that at all, except, that Ray Liotta was in both. Yeah. But, Chad, what do you think of the movie? Yeah,
that's interesting you say realistic, because I see what you're saying, but I don't think that the characters are real in it. I have mixed feelings about this movie. I think it had potential to be great. It had a potential to kind of fill that niche of Snatch and Lock, Stock, and even similar to the movie we saw earlier this year, Seven Psychopaths.
A lot of movies with stealing dogs in it.
Both had
Do you not know? There has to be a documentary on that soon, because apparently it's an epidemic in our world. Seven Psychopaths. They stole dogs in this. Also in this movie, people steal dogs.
Yeah, and despite that, I think that there's a lot of differences in the long dialogue sequences, the humor mixed with the mobster genre.
Very little humor, though.
In this?
Yeah.
I feel like there was a good amount. I feel like it wasn't going for it, though, but it did put it in there.
Yeah.
And I think it could have been that movie. It wasn't 100% humor. It wasn't that movie, but it could have been. And I think it might have been better off for that. I think it was kind of struggling to find its identity a little bit with, the plot was few and far between, a lot of very long dialogue sequences. I feel like I came through the movie thinking it was very self-indulgent, and it's funny enough that at the end I discovered that the director and the writer were the same person, because the writing also was indulgent. I feel like the directing, there was parts where he's trying this cool technique on, there's a sequence where the one character is he does heroin and he's kind of tripping, and it goes in and out of his consciousness, and the conversation kind of goes wanes in and out, and it was just okay, I see he's trying to make this statement with this shot, and he kept doing it, and just those shots took me out of it multiple times, where it was he's trying this technique now,
And we also discussed this too, sorry to interrupt, but there's kind of a scene in a car, and it's not as poignant, or it's kind of the Pulp Fiction scene of the Royale with cheese kind of thing. And you can see he's hey, I think Quentin Tarantino is a good director.
Yeah.
He adds these dialogues into these movies that Reservoir Dogs, when they have that early conversation about tipping, that has no point to the story, but is a cool thing that people are going to quote, which I don't think was ever achieved in this movie.
Right, you're exactly right. And I think movies like Snatch, and even at parts, I feel like Seven Psychopaths did this well, where it did play to that. That's what movie it was. It was that movie. Whereas this, I feel like it threw it in there because he's ooh, I can do that because other movies have done that. Where it didn't fit with this, because it was at points very violent and trying to kind of focus, I think, what you're saying on the reality of the situations, and also the writing as well. I felt there were scenes, and that's kind of what you were saying, where no point to the conversation at all. It went off on tangents. And in another movie, it might make sense, but in this movie, it didn't make sense because, this movie was trying to service what little plot it had, but
Well, and
that
you
was kinda
brought this
interesting.
up too. James Gandolfini's character, who I really liked
Yeah.
as a character,
Yeah.
didn't need to be in the movie
Right.
at all. He literally was pointless
Yeah.
to the
He did nothing except have long dialogue conversations.
that had these kind
two
of
scenes, maybe even. I think it was like the hotel
two scenes
and the
bar.
thing.
Yeah,
Like that's it.
but you know his dialogue was kind of to take you out of the movie a little bit because
Right.
it was a little different. But yeah, I mean, this movie has me. You know, I didn't love it or I didn't hate it. You know, it certainly isn't a rush out and go see kind of movie. I think the first third is the most unbearable part of the movie. Some of the dialogue that they have, you know, they're talking about like prison and you know how bad it is to be on the inside, and they make some weird allusions to animals that just it was very odd and just didn't seem to fit.
An
in
older
the movie.
couple walked right out.
Well, and that's
It's
you know
fun.
what I was going to get to. You know, people walked out of the movie that we were in, and you know there was only like 20 people in the theater that we were in, and also I you know was reading up on it online, and I heard that a lot of theaters are you know people are leaving. You know, someone else from work said that they went to see it and they left. That they just, but I think the beginning is mainly it's all talking. It's the setup of this heist that they have, you know, which isn't much of a heist, you know.
Yeah, it's one scene,
It's
yeah.
one quick little thing, and then really the movie is dealing with the consequences of that. But them the two characters of the robbers, you know, the guys who ended up holding up the place. You know, one's on heroin, he's not making any sense. Kind of, they're kind of hard to understand, and it just didn't. I don't know.
Yeah,
it
I
could have
feel-
been skipped over.
I feel like their characters weren't clearly defined in a majority of them. Even Brad Pitt's character, who I feel was the strongest character out of all of them, was sort of a gray area because he was this like expert, but then he kind of had to get approval for everything, which I guess was a separate thing. But it was just weird, like the way everything worked, because he was like this great killer they called in to you know consult, but then he couldn't kill the guy he knew just because he talked to him once and he didn't like. I guess that's the whole point of the movie.
Yeah.
But it was just weird, and I didn't. Some characters I was just confused on what their point was, and like there was just plot lines that were just completely unresolved. Like the heroin addict, his plot line at the end was just unsatisfying to me and weird, and yeah, it wasn't much of an ending really. I mean,
There wasn't much of an ending. There wasn't much of a plot either. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, some of the
It's not a plot movie,
Yeah,
for
some of
sure.
the brutal scenes I thought were filmed well enough. You know,
But they were-
this movie was violent, but it wasn't. There weren't many portions of violence in the movie. I mean,
Yeah, but I feel like all the
handful.
brutality in the scenes were muted by the direction of the scene, because they're all
can see
either
that.
slow-mo or like the glass was like, you know,
Sure.
basically slow-mo, and then just weird techniques that the director used. So yeah, it was violent, but it didn't land on you as violent. As
and
other
it was just
movies
supposed to be
did.
like him able to kill people so easily. Like he's like,
Right.
you know, he's talking about the one character. Well, don't beat him up. You know, just kill him. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, the poor
Well, I
guy.
put him
You
through
know,
that,
just
yeah.
but
Which sounds funny, but
you know, it just kind of it didn't hit on me as a movie like this should. I mean, it wasn't a gangster movie, your typical gangster movie, and then it also wasn't like your meta, you know, Seven Psychopaths,
Yes,
self-aware. It was kind of each of those, but not enough of each to actually, for me, to take it to a level that was really enjoyable. The
well
one thing
put,
that
yeah.
I really did not like about this movie is they had this politicalness throughout the movie that really just any time, you know, in the beginning you
Every
see,
scene, pretty much.
you know, it's around the time of McCain and Obama running against each other. You saw two, you know, billboards juxtaposed with each other. Then throughout they have, you know, different tracks of speeches from, you know, George Bush, from Barack Obama, different things like that. You know, and it kind of culminates on, I guess it was
Bush's-
Obama's
Obama's acceptance yeah.
speech and things like that. And with whatever they were trying to accomplish there, to say this is how America is or whatever, I did not get that at all. And I was very confused at that choice to add
Yeah.
those things in, because they had it where characters, these trash bag characters, are listening to like NPR or, you know, this grunge,
would never happen.
you know, this
Yeah.
crappy bar, you know, has the news on, and it goes from one character to the next, and they're watching or listening to the same thing.
Yeah.
And it took me out of it so much. Whereas there's a scene of, you know, Brad Pitt's character is introduced to this Johnny Cash song, and I'm like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
The music with the character being introduced, the coolness of it is great. So I just don't. I might have missed some, giant thing that they were trying to accomplish with that, but I just did not get the influx of politics at all in this movie.
I think what took me out of it more,
and I hope it wasn't just for that last line that Brad Pitt delivers in the movie, because
that's
stupid.
I think what took me out of it most was that at first I was irritated because I was like, oh, he's going to try to make this political statement, and then I was like, okay, well, some of the things that they're saying follow along with what's happening in the movie, with Bush saying, we have to make moves for the country, for the fiscal crisis, so that kind of fit with what was going on. And then there was just random things, and at the end it was what it was, and I was just like, well, why are you putting this in here to make me think that it means something when it might or it might not? I don't know. So.
But I will say the acting in the movie is pretty top notch. I think all the characters were pretty believable. Richard Jenkins, I thought, as like the businessy, didn't want to get his hands dirty kind of guy, was great. Ray Liotta, I think, was great seeing him on screen in that role again. Brad Pitt, so I think the acting was good. I think it's a character study. You're not going to go in and get the greatest plot out of this movie, but you might enjoy to see.
Catch on video.
Yeah, Netflix or something. And it's that time of the episode where we like to give our thanks. So, Chad, what are you thankful for today?
Well, I've been catching his show on History Channel, and funny enough, I've said on the show multiple times that I'm not a big fan of period movies, period dramas, but I do like the actual historical things on like History Channel and Discovery Channel and stuff. It's called Mankind, and it's basically
the story of us.
It is the story of us. Yeah, it's basically
the 20 from the movies telling us.
Oh, really? That's on the 20? I didn't even see that. It's funny. Basically, what it is I equate it to like Planet Earth, which when that was on each episode. It's kind of a mini series, but each episode kind of focuses on a portion of the Earth, whereas this focus on a portion of our history, and it's more fictionalized obviously than Planet Earth because they can't actually film that historical stuff, but it has experts in it, and
they should hop in the TARDIS and go back.
Yeah, they should, but they can't do that. But basically, it's a really nerdy thing, and if you're not into history, you probably won't like it. But I find it enjoyable just kind of because they can tie different time periods together with through lines, which is cool. Because each episode kind of focuses not on like a period of history; it's more on like all these type of people in our history, like inventors or so on and so forth. So it's really interesting. Catch it. I think it's wrapping up right now, so you can probably catch them all on demand, and I'm sure at Netflix at some point.
You should just finish Assassin's Creed and just be like watching the show.
It's true.
But I'm going to thank a movie today that I got through Redbox that I really enjoyed, Ruby Sparks. It stars Paul Dano, and I forget the girl's name, so Chad will put it up there behind me. But she wrote the movie and also stars in it, and it's this quirky little indie story of Paul Dano's character. He's a writer who wrote this very well received book, and has had writer's block since then. Gets this assignment from his therapist to just write something or whatever it is. He ends up writing about this girl that he's been dreaming about. She materializes. What do you do then? And I really enjoyed Stranger Than Fiction when that was out.
It's very much like that.
It's very much like that for the first half of the movie, but then it kind of does the thing where it takes that concept and turns it and plays with it a little bit, and a lot of it actually. It plays with it to the point of getting. There's a scene where it's really dark and it was very uncomfortable to watch, but really just great context for a movie. And it's not a huge genre of films, but I'm like, oh, this has been done before. But by the second half, it really was stuff that they weren't, that they haven't done before. Great cast of supporting characters. So definitely check that out. I think it's a really good movie that kind of flew under everyone's radar.
Yeah, recently. For sure. Cool. So we'll be back on Thursday. We're gonna be talking about a new video game, Hitman Absolution. So make sure you check back for that. But thanks for watching this episode, and we'll see you next time.